What I was thinking, what I was thinking about starting next week, and feel free to send in your protest to Craig. Because,
You do whatever you want.
well, because it's starting to get a bit far afield because, so for the past few weeks, what I've been doing is, I've been looking at kind of alchemistry and tarot reading. And so I'm going to do a series of presentations on tarot reading from an alchemical viewpoint. And I think that actually has, I think it's also pertinent for dreams. And it's not the standard way they get read. And so, we can occasionally turn to a Zen for, some of the more typical of what this would mean, and you can see what you prefer. But the other choice is I could do like what Craig did with that one book, and I could just, record a series of these that then would be available. So if tarot reading seems a bit afar, I'll do that. I think with the alchemical piece, it's of general interest, but I may be fooling myself.
Well, this is your time, Gary. You use your own, what would feed you the most, I think, would be the right,
Well, you can look at it this way too. If you went up to the Jung platform and signed up for their tarot reading course, it's like $2,500.
well, I know. Okay, well, you can go ahead and
Yeah,
show us how it works.
And I'll also have a set of papers out there as well. So, you'll have the presentations and then you'll have a set of papers. So you'll have things to work with as well, So I think it's something that, afterwards you could like order your own tarot deck and practice it in the form that I'm describing. But I'll go ahead and get started here.
Hi, Azine, and we're see who's come. I wish I could talk to Kat, but she's having trouble getting in. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah. Okay. So this week it's the tarot journey, and sometimes it's called the Fool's Journey. He's at the top, and that's one way that it's occasionally looked at. But the final card in each of these three rows, it dramatizes a specific stage in the hero's progress, and how the three cards on this vertical axis connect with each other and with others along the way. So, oops, didn't mean to do that. So if we look at the last card, which is the world, at the top of this vertical row, we have the Chariot. And so there, the central figure is not a naked human being, but a king in the Chariot. And he stands rigidly above the earth. He's cut off from the opposites of the instinctual nature, represented by the different colored horses, with which he has no direct contact. So he's very cut off from nature in general. And the 4 points of the compass are pictured as 4 rigid posts, which confine him in a small square space. He's been launched on this journey, from where he left as the lover, but for now it's an ego trip. If he imagines himself as a kingly charioteer, he'll experience many humiliations along the way. We saw some of these in the Hangman and in Death. But in Temperance, which is the card directly beneath the Chariot, all that was upside down, stagnant, and dismembered seemed to flow together once again, in the figure of an angel pouring a liquid essence from one container to another. At this point, the hero's energies, formerly dedicated to ego development and conquest of the outer world, now begin to turn towards inner development. But the figure presiding over this change was not a human being. It was an angel, an archetypal figure symbolizing a movement taking place in the deep unconscious. So before he can become aware of this divine presence within, the hero must undergo further depression and darkness, even the danger of psychosis, as we saw on the moon, whose name Luna can spell lunacy. The bottom row of our map pictured various stages of illumination, from Luciferian confusion to the dazzling sunshine of golden understanding. Now the hero emerges into a new world whose gentle glow reflects elements of all that has gone before. But this is not the end, because we still have to reckon with the influence of the fool, whose number 0 gave him special privileges and powers. He has started us on this journey and has apparently popped up at times to mock us and other times to help. As Hermes, he takes us between worlds and is unaffected by time. The fool contrives to be present at the important parts of the journey. So this is Ferrari's adoration. And here we have the fool here and his dog there. So it's just, of course, this is a bit of an interpretation, but it's interesting that you can see it popping up in art. Sally Nichols suggests that the participation of the dog is important because without the protection and guidance of his animal counterpart, he would never have found his way to the manger. Also, had the fool rejected his beastly self, he would have remained incomplete and wanting. That being pure of spirit in itself is not enough, that we must also be whole of heart to enter the heavenly kingdom with the wise men. So Sally Nichols, she closes the book with this following paragraph. But as we know, the fool never remains long in one place. Soon our little mascot, God's little friend and ours, will be impatient to be off, luring us with him on a new journey into new dimensions of awareness. As the tarot has shown, life is a process, life is motion. Serenity is not freedom from the storm, but equilibrium at the center. So the world cannot be the end product of the hero's travels. It is rather the image that inspired him to undertake them. Jung summed it up this way: complete redemption from the sufferings of this world is and must remain an illusion. Christ's earthly life likewise ended not in complacent bliss, but on the cross. The goal is important only as an idea. The essential thing is the opus which leads to the goal. That is the goal of a lifetime. And so that's the last one of the tarot official. And next time we'll start on tarot reading.
That's fabulous, Gary. You know what? I'm so I had never seen the tarot cards in their orientation, and the fact that the fool stands outside everything.
Yeah,
isn't that beautiful? And the fact that the dog has been brought up. I mean, the dog dominates all of my dreams, and he's always emaciated, always is in need of food. So what does that really say? It says that my nature is in need of food. Where is it going to get the food? It's going to get from the images, the soul, the images that the Anima sends, which I perceive and I digest. And this is how not this awareness is nourished, but the bones, the heart, the blood, the cells are nourished. They will remember this image. The dog will, with that food. And now it will inform me directly, not just from the inner world into here, but from the body to here. So, I mean, that's sort of the storage area for that soul substance. I really do think that's what Saint Paul had this. Jung tells about it in Mysterium that there's something called, I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but apocatastasis, And what that means is through bringing in the images of soul into us, all of nature is also transformed. And that means our bodies are transformed. And then the bodies can speak to us directly while we're awake. I think that is something very important to do with individuation. That not just some image that comes up, but the body which is stored all of these images starts to be able to speak to us while we're awake. The dog. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I'm so glad that we went over this Animus book again, because I am finding out things I never, ever found out before through this review. And the problem of the anima and the man with his anima and the woman with the animus is similar. And what needs to happen in both is they need to become consciously feminine. And that aspect of word that developed the separation from that, the word, in the beginning was the word. That thing that separated us from nature, created consciousness, words, is overvalued. And it's what separates us from nature. So for what happens to the man is he has to sacrifice word and thinking, and start to go back to the original mind and glean its wisdom. In the case of the woman, she is dominated by the negative aspect of the animus and the father gods and all of this aspect that represses and suppresses her femininity. She needs to, like the man, make this original mind the foremost in her consciousness. And, as she's going to say here, that's paradoxically the woman's problem with the animus, is not that she's too masculine, but that she's not feminine enough. She needs, and the only way that she can become feminine, this is what's so interesting. The only way that the woman can become feminine is through giving attention to the animus, which is her tyrant. She needs to revolt against it, But that's wait till this fleshes out. So it's similar in the fairy tale to the only way that the man can unite with the swan maiden is to become a swan himself. Okay, it's just going to be a wonderful aspect of telling us what both anima and animus are. So we'll just go through it, and I want to go through it somewhat slowly, like 2 times on this one part, because I want to fully understand it. I don't yet. I think the review is very important. So, anima, animus, and they both come from the word animate, which is something that brings into being, is that energy that makes us alive. Soul, man without, what's a soulless man? The animus is a slight different the meaning, but the 2 archetypal figures are of especially great importance in becoming whole. Okay, they're rooted, and this is because they are rooted in the collective unconscious, but belong to individual consciousness. In other words, we're born with them, but they don't belong to us. They belong to the collective unconscious, but we're born with them. So thus they form the connecting link or bridge. They've got weight, you know. They're not spirit. They have a weight. They're not body, but they're not spirit either. Thus they form the connecting link or bridge between the personal and the impersonal, between the conscious and the unconscious. Animus, of course, is masculine. Anima is feminine, and the function complexes behave in ways compensatory to the outer personality. Now, we have a lot of gender fluidity nowadays, but there is, I don't care what your gender is, there is a part of you which is not, which you're unconscious of. That's your compensatory factor. And that compensatory factor you were born with has its own personality. Whatever the compensatory consists of, So now it's compensatory to the outer personality, but it is an inner personality. It exhibits characteristics which are lacking in the outer personality, the manifest conscious personality. In a man, these are things to do with the receptive feminine realm. He's not receptive or feminine. In the woman, it has to do with where she is more familiar with relatedness, with relationship, with one-on-one, with the near at hand. Hi, Dahlia. Yeah. We're lucky to have you as long as you can stay. Don't worry about it. But anyway, she's has to deal with the near at hand, that what's on the earth, what's practical, what's commonsensical, with nurturing children, with nurturing the community. What she doesn't have is this air being, this abstractness that does not deal with the near at hand. It's deals with things that are far away, with stars, cosmic patterns, so that is what she lacks, and that's what the animus can provide her, but he can't be her tyrant, So they disturb. We only encounter them usually in dreams. If they do come into the outer world, they disturb our outer adaptation in an unwholesome way. Characteristic of these figures, that they're determined not only by sexual characteristics, but they're conditioned by the experience that we have with the representation of the other sex. So there's nature and nurture in these images, and then the collective image that women carry of the psyche of man. So the collective image of man carried by the woman. These factors will coalesce to form a quantity which is neither solely an image nor solely experience, but it's an entity that's not organically coordinated with any other psychic function. It's a law unto itself. It interferes in the life of the individual as if it were an alien element. Now, what it's really is the fact that is alien means in the woman's side, it's not just an air being, it's a word being. it everything it does has to do with words. That's the only way it comprehends, differentiates, or understands. It doesn't do it through perceiving or receiving. It does it through differentiating, through words, you know. And it is sometimes this interference can be helpful, but nowadays it seems to be more disturbing or destructive. Now, they're psychic realities, the anima and the animus, and they are, even though they are not comparable to concrete realities, their effect is no less powerful than concrete realities. It's just in discussing the animus, we're dealing with an absolute reality. It's an unchangeable entity, and it's a spiritual process. Okay. And so when dealing with the animus, we're dealing with the masculine principle. Well, what is the masculine principle? Okay, well, we're going to go to our old friend Faust, you know, and he's translating the Gospel of John's, the Word Gospel, the Logos Gospel, and he says that he asks himself, if in the beginning was the Word, or Logos, wouldn't read better if it was in the beginning was the power, in the beginning was the deed, or in the beginning was the meaning. Now, these are four expressions that are meant to reproduce what was meant by the Greek word logos. And it's the quintessence, that's the prototype or the archetype of the masculine principle, is the logos, the word. So they are expressed in a progressive sequence, each stage having its representative in life as well as in the development of the animus within us. It's very interesting when the animus comes up as a horse, for instance, the dynamic principle. You know, I mean, that's the very interesting. Now, the four-sidedness characterizing the logos principle presupposes consciousness. So without consciousness, we would need neither will, deed, word, or meaning aren't conceivable. So the idea of these, Jung said that the consciousness came into being through four. Through the four is how consciousness, it's split up into four, and there's always one unknown leg of that four, always. So what happened is three legs go into the consciousness, one leg stays in, you know, and that is how consciousness came into being. So we've got thinking and feeling, we've got sensation. Which leg remained in the unconscious? Intuition. You know, it's not in time and space. So now, so we find these men of power, deed, word, and meaning in the outer world. Now, power is actually the will to act. It's not just mere sheer power. It's the will to act. And then, so just as there are men of physical power, men of deeds, men of words, and men of wisdom, so too the animus image will differ in accordance with the woman's stage of development on her natural gifts. So, is your animus going to be which one of the four is it going to be? It's actually going to be all four at some point. You need to have all four of these. So now this image, it can be transferred to a real man who assumes the animus role because of his resemblance to it. Now, this is so mysterious, you know. It's just going to be a fairy tale and a lot of other things coming up in this thing. is the resemblance of the man to this uh, animus image. You know, now it also is going to appear not just as a projection on outer man, but as a dream or fantasy figure. But since it always is referring to a living psychic reality, that living psychic reality gives a coloration both to the dream man and to the outer man. And now, for the original mind, and we're going to talk a lot about the original mind, because what is man lacking? Original mind. You know, what does woman have? But is she has original mind? She can think in the original mind in a way that the man can't. You know, where the man does not really have very good access to that. But for the original mind, or the younger woman, or for the primordial or original in every woman, the man distinguished by physical prowess is usually an animus figure. You know, some powerful Hercules, hero, bullfighter, cowboy, you know, or aviator, you know. But for the more exacting woman, as she progresses, her animus can be one who is accomplished deeds. He can be, you know, Magellan, or he can be someone who climbs Mount Everest or something, you know, uh, and the directs his power towards something of great significance. He achieves something fabulous, you know, and the transition here is between power and deed is not sharp, because power and deed mutually condition each other. Now, the man who rules over word or over meaning now is representing an intellectual tendency. We're getting into the real, what separated man from nature in word and meaning. And because word and meaning correspond more closely to mental capacities. So such men exemplify animus in a narrower sense. It's the spiritual guide representing the intellectual gifts of women. So here also is where the animus becomes more problematical. This is so interesting because the whole object here is consciousness, clarity, which we all lack, you know, and that's what this is going to be driving to ultimately. What's interesting is one thing about the woman. There's two sacrifices that have to be made. The woman has to sacrifice her unconscious role as someone who casts magical spells on man. That's her great power, is that she can wrap a man around her little finger with her woman magic. And so she needs to sacrifice that power in order to become whole, in order to have a good relationship with the animus. On the man's side, he needs to sacrifice his power, which is basically the power, deed, the word, and meaning. He needs to sacrifice that, and now think in terms of the original mind, which is feminine. And we're going to get to what that means pretty soon. But otherwise, he'll have no relationship whatsoever with the depths, which is where if he doesn't, then he will never, ever, he'll be a soulless individual unless he sacrifices his great power. And it's a descent, really, for him. For the woman, you know, it is she needs to lift herself, her femininity up, and she needs to become conscious of the animus. And so what she's sacrificing is the unconscious femininity, She needs to sacrifice her power of magic and now become conscious of the masculine aspect, the animus too. And he can't be. How does she? What does that mean to be conscious of the animus? That means to. In both cases, this is the way I really saw it as this. In both cases, the king needs to be dethroned. Okay. Now, in the woman, the king needs to be dethroned. The tyrant that rules over her needs to be thrown off. Okay. And now the feminine world is going to be in the ascendant, and not in its magical fashion, but in the wisdom of Sophia and the Great Mother, in that aspect, And now the Animus is to come back and use his words and his meaning for feminine enlightenment. And as von Franz says, feminine enlightenment is always, always, always in terms of love and its problems. There's no feminine enlightenment that doesn't have to do with love and its problems. Not the type of enlightenment we're talking about here. There might be all kinds of things, epiphanies in the knowledge realm, but we're talking about life wisdom here. So it's a little bit different type of enlightenment. I got to keep an eye on the time. Oh, we got some time. Okay, so anyway, the animus image that represents power and deed, and word and meaning, needs to be harmoniously coordinated with the feminine principle, and that means it cannot not rule her. It needs to lend effective aid to her. But there is this is the problem, is the failure of this integration, of this harmonious coordination of the masculine principle with the feminine principle in women. So what usually happens is the masculine behavior overruns and suppresses the feminine principle, and how that usually manifests in the outer world when you're overrun and suppressed by the masculine animus is ruthless or brutal men/women. I mean, it really is where the power principle comes in. It really is what Emma Young's going to say here pretty soon, is that when you see a woman who's very aggressive and very brutal, it doesn't mean that she's not feminine enough. It means that she has not paid enough attention to who is calling the shots here. It's not her. It's someone else. She needs to see what the animus is doing. That's very difficult. Especially if you're completely possessed by it, it's almost impossible. And this was what Barbara Hanna said, and Marie-Louise von Franz said, that the only way that they, von Franz or Barbara Hanna, could tell if they were possessed by the tyrant animus is to see how their behavior affected the people around them. And from the reactions of the people around them, they could tell if there was great tension or something. This is the animus in me is causing this tension with that person. And then at that point, they could become conscious of the animus in them, and they could defang him and let them come up, and then the tension would disappear completely. I mean, it's just a wonderful. You see how complex this is, though. I mean, it's you know what I thought is it is simple, but it's not so simple. You know, it is when you it and see, I haven't got my head completely wrapped around it. That's why I want to do two sessions just to review what we're talking about right now. So anyway, the woman is becoming very capable and conscious in the masculine work world and things, but there is a price to be paid for that a little bit, and we're going to come up with that. That the problem of women today lies in seems to be that she has an inescapable to demand to become conscious. The she's been freed by technological innovations, entered the public square, but she must realize that this ability, that she first and foremost, before anything, must realize she is a woman and become one, and then participate in the public square. And because otherwise she's being ruled by the tyrant, and kind of ruled by the power principle too. So the what he's saying is, or she's saying is, from all these technological innovations, and she's the biological task is no longer so pressing on her. What she used to be creative in was in cooking. Well, she still is, but in cooking and tending the house and doing all the chores of the house, she's very creative at doing that. And now that creativity, she doesn't have to do it anymore because that's not her task. So now her creativity needs to flow somewhere else. That it has there's a lot, her libido, the energy that was applied to those tasks now needs to go somewhere else. Where is it going to go? And so it is this idea of that it's not now. There is the idea of the woman to now occupy herself with the logos principle and with spiritual matters is not arrogance. It's not presumption that drives her to the audacity of wanting to participate in this divine world. Now listen to this. The way she puts this: we are not like Eve, lured by the beauty of the fruit of tree of knowledge, and nor does the snake encourage us. So we're neither lured nor encouraged by the snake. Something else has come to woman, an inner law, a kairos moment, a command, a demand. She is confronted with the necessity, not the beauty of the apple or the encouragement of the snake to eat the apple, but the necessity of biting into the apple. Eve must bite into it, and it doesn't matter whether she thinks it's good to eat or not. She's confronted with the fact that the paradise of naturalness and unconsciousness, in which all of us sometimes would too gladly tarry, is gone forever. It's never coming back. And this is how matters stand, even if surface appearances may say otherwise. We're at a very significant turning point. And she says that this is always accompanied at the turning points by grotesque exaggerations and unsuccessful efforts, but that's neither here nor there, because the problem doesn't go away. So it's the demand for consciousness, for activity with the higher realms, anima, this kairos moment has come up. Starts with the view. It starts with this view that in the human being there is a certain basic idea that must be fulfilled. And so it's just as in an egg or a seed of corn is already contain the idea of life destined to come from it. There, this sum of this energy for spiritual functions in woman must be applied to them, or it's going to go into the unconscious and cause trouble. So a modern woman uh, who can't find this in here's where she can't find it. She can't find it in the church. The reason she can't find it in the church is because the church is not personal. It's not you. I mean, it's not your inner law, your inner demand. So now the idea that's as much a projection as project. Every time you project your animus or your anima on someone else, you're saying this: you do the work. I'm not going to do it. In other words, I'm not going to become spiritual or a scholarly. I'm going to marry a scholar, a doctor, or uh, or some wise man. I'm not going to do the work myself. Then I can sit back and relax. On the man's side, he's when he marries his animus projection, you know, the projected his animus projected onto this woman. Then he's saying, okay, she's going to handle my feeling function. She's going to handle all the world of relatedness and the world of love, and I don't have to ever become knowledgeable about that half of life which is totally missing in me. So that's the idea of in the woman she has to withdraw the projection. I mean, the reason you have the projection in the first place, I would say, is that you are using your feminine magic to lure the man in, and he's going to now provide something, and then you can just stay in this feminine magical realm. But isn't it wonderful? And I'm sure you've met women who are very, very beautiful, and yet they have no patience for anyone who thinks they're magical. No, I'm not magical. Don't tell me I'm magical. I'm a human being first. So don't do that to me. At that point, all the projections, all the illusions are gone. And so now this process can really begin. So the woman is freed, is her psychic energy is freed. So what's going to happen at this the law of the time moment, this kairos moment to which all women are subject, from which no women can escape? Even though its terms are so obscure. So this current moment in in women's consciousness requires a widening of consciousness. They must discover the unconscious. They must investigate the unconscious. They must know what its point of view is. They must know that it is a living entity, and they must investigate its images. This is also happening in quantum physics. I mean, we're suddenly energies which before were imperceptible are now known to us. And so these new worlds have come into being with laws that govern them. And we need to become aware of these new laws. We need to bring what was once remote near, and we need to expand the range of our perception, our ability to perceive over the whole of the earth and even far beyond it. In all this extent, this illumination and consciousness is expressed. So this is what's asked of the woman right now, is to become conscious. And it's also asked of the man right now to become conscious. They are both in a very sorry state, okay? And why are they both in a very sorry state? Is because of the suppression of the feminine receptive wisdom, which both must make a sacrifice. The woman must become conscious of her femininity. That means she says, I give up my highest power, which is my unconscious femininity, which makes all men worship me. Okay, I I I abdicate that throne. I don't want it. Don't give it to me. I give up that power. And then we find someone who comes up to us who sees how powerful we are, and they're just absolutely head over heels in love with us. We have to pop their illusion because we're consciously feminine now. In the case of the man, he needs to withdraw his anima projection. He needs to sacrifice this overvaluing of the ego and start to overvalue or value correctly the source. Okay, this isn't so much feminine, it's nature. Nature is feminine. What is masculine? It is that thing that's not nature. It is the word, the thing that separated us from nature. Okay, and yet provided us provided nature now with a vehicle for nature itself to become conscious. What Jung said all along, that the history of the evolution of consciousness on Earth is the story of a progressive incarnation of that wisdom which created nature in the first place, created the flowers, the trees, the plants, the fishes, the animals, all of this. That wisdom now wants to incarnate in time and space. And it needed a vehicle to do that. And the only way it could do that is who invented words? Not man, not humans. That wisdom created the words. Because you can take any society. I mean, there was 7 or 20,000 different societies which developed their own words. So the words come out of us. We don't create them, and they create a world. And that world now, which has been created, which is just solely word now, and has this distortion. I mean, it's like a radio signal that's got 10 million things, and all you hear is a great big buzz. We need to fine tune that, so that now that nature itself can come to some kind of a stability, some kind of balance in both men and women, and they can become conscious of their that aspect, and they sacrifice those things that make them unconscious. Just a second, I get Tim's coming in, but anyway, I think we can. I might want to review this for next time. But do you see this is so? Do you see how this is sort of a? Hey, Tim, we're just getting into kind of a really the idea, and let's just ask everyone their thoughts of it, because it would just stunned me. Is that the problem in both men and women is they both need to become consciously feminine. And by consciously feminine, women have to give up their unconscious femininity, which is their magical powers of attracting men. That needs to go away. That's an illusion. And it stops them from being fully conscious. But men would like them to stay that way. That's what she says. Anima and Animus constellate each other. If you have a man who is totally animus coming at you, and he's just totally dominant, he's not conscious. He is a walking animus projection that we haven't projected on him. He's just full of that. He's possessed by the animus, and then so that brings forth your unconscious anima in you to, and so you become unconscious. And if a woman is possessed by her own, unconscious of her femininity, she's a walking anima image. And that's what Joseph Campbell said after he thought he had dispelled all these illusions, teaching 40 years at Sarah Lawrence College, a girls' college. I ain't nothing. No woman can have power over me. Her magic means nothing to me. Until he walks into his publisher's office and sees Jackie Kennedy sitting there, his publisher. He's going to be his editor, book editor. He says, it took me, he said, weeks, to deal with her humanly, you know. So the idea is both in men and women. The problem in man is he overvalues the word, the logos, and he needs to sacrifice that, and so that now he can go down into the way the dream world thinks. Okay, the dream world does not think in his word way; it thinks in images. He needs to become familiar with that language, and that language is completely feminine because it speaks in images. The anima creates images. The animus creates meaning. Okay, so the idea in the woman is she is under the control of a tyrant. She needs to overthrow the tyrant in both cases. The man's needs to dethrone his king of logos. In the woman, she needs to dethrone the tyrant of logos. And she also needs to give up her power as a magical being. Now, this is the whole idea. Okay, so anyway, we're going to review this next time, and I hope in a more organized fashion, but because I was sick last week, and I haven't had much time to completely finish everything I'm doing. But we don't have that many people here, but we'll just talk until everybody's done talking. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, could you repeat that one last thing you said? The woman has to give up the tyrant of
The
logos?
woman has to revolt against the tyrant of logos. She needs to have a revolution and take him off the throne. Because the only way she can have any relationship with the logos is through a harmonious, through first being consciously feminine, and then have a harmonious coordination with him. He cannot rule her. He does rule her. And we're going to talk about how he rules her. He rules her by, usually, primarily by opinion. And one opinion is this. There's three opinions, really. The first opinion is you will never, don't even start on anything because you're totally incapable. You can't do anything. Just stay back. You're nothing you can do. You're going to fail at everything you do. So it causes deflation. And then the other one is he tells her, "You're the most wonderful being on in the earth. There's no one more wonderful than you." And so it causes an inflation. And then the third one is that it comes in and it just tells her generally accepted truths, which have nothing to do with the person in front of me. Now, men are the worst at this. They walk in and some woman anyone is suffering. And they come in, well, why don't you get up on your 2 feet and go get a job and look at the want ads, they got all kinds of advice. That's not what they need. It doesn't suit what we're seeing right here in front of us. What that person needs is not thinking. That person needs feeling, sensation, and intuition. The sufferer. The sufferer will not be healed with words or with thinking. Could you name a sufferer who's going to be healed by words? And they need to be healed by relatedness and by those aspects. So, what now? Those that is the tyrant of woman. She is. I know, Azine. You have. I saw you reacting. That you. What is your opinion of the tyrant Animus, the one who rules feminine consciousness? What do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's unconscious power.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to consciously practice power.
Yeah.
Um, can I continue
Yeah. Sure.
talking
Yeah.
about it? So about power, we really we say power is related to animus and love is related to animal. And for a woman, as you said, she has to overthrow the king as animals. And also women generally challenge men. They kind of dismember men. I think women come to dismember men. And men who cannot succumb to that, because you have to be dismembered to be membered again. And that's when you become original. You have to get rid of ideas that you've been taught all your life, orthodox teachings, and then you will become original. But in order to do that, for a woman to challenge the power inside her and inside and in the man, I think one thing that is a problem in our time is that men have lost their power. So you see a lot of men that they have this shell of animals and they think they're in power and they want to dominate, but they really can't because they're weak, because they're boys. They have not been initiated as men, as Robert Bly says. So that's the problem. What I've seen in myself is that I think naturally, as Jung says, it's like a matchbox. Man needs to be a little bit more, a little bit dominant and bigger and supportive, something like that. But women in our time, they have discovered their power, their some kind of manly, masculine power, because the real power in women is has different layers. One is beauty, one is silence. Being there's huge power. It's like atomic bomb.
Yeah.
In silence than in words. But so we're trying to discover our power. But if you claim to be dominant, if you claim to be the man in the relationship and you don't have it, I personally, I cannot help but destroying this person. This is what happens in me, and I've been aware of it since I was 20-something years old. With my first partner, I didn't marry him because I knew I would destroy him. And I don't know, it's natural. It's definitely the animus in me. But this is a very, it's a huge issue in our time. That women has basically castrated men and they are looking for men. All I see around me are boys. That's the problem, I think, in our time.
Yeah, you know, the idea, again, which just was a complete revelation to me. I'm just going to say that, first of all, was that the only way that the man can, well, first of all, you're talking about the puer. Have you ever seen so many puers? I mean, pretty
No,
much everybody
even
is a
no,
poet.
even Xanax, even men
Yeah.
with structures, with men who have fish. I am
Yeah.
just like them, very successful and powerful.
Hmm.
Um, um, no, the power, the real power is not.
Yeah. Well, but the idea, here's the real revelation to me, and we'll flesh it out next time a little more organized, is that the what man has to sacrifice is his ability to think and differentiate, and to um, uh, he needs to become a swan. He needs to become a swan. In other words, he needs to he needs to uh, give up his separation from nature and become nature, and that's how he unites with the swan maiden, is he becomes a swan himself. Now, at that point, then he and the swan maiden might be able to return to the outer world, but this is now in a completely different form. See, the idea when the swan maiden comes into the world and man does not become a swan, he's really making her his prisoner. You know, he basically abducts her and won't let her leave. You know, and the first time the window's open, she's going to put on her swan garment and fly away. So she's very escapist. The only way to make her non so flighty is you become a swan yourself, because then now she's with someone with whom she has an affinity. Now, on the woman's side, it's a little bit different. Let me describe what I think the architecture and the engineering is. Just and this is just a stab at it. Okay, is that the woman is here's I'm just going to talk about the average state and of a woman who is in need of psychotherapy, Jungian psychotherapy. Okay. Now you can take different stages of this. Some of them might have PhDs. Okay, but let's just take the average one. Okay, and the average one is this. Um, she has all kinds of men flocking around her because she's so beautiful. You know, and I loved your that she's also can control you by silence. Isn't that
Oh,
a wonderful power? The one of just you know it's one of okay. Here's an example of it. You know where Lancelot was to come to see Guinevere. You know, and his horse is shot out from under him, you know, and so now he has to walk to her, and there goes by a cart pulled by a donkey, and he says, if I get in that cart, I can get to Guinevere faster, but he hesitates for 3 steps because a knight shouldn't be seen riding in a cart pulled by a donkey, you know, that would be shameful. When he gets to see Guinevere, who's a goddess, she's as cold as ice. She won't say a word to him. So I mean that's this wonderful power of silence. Okay. Now whether it's
the negative side of it, but silence can also be very positively
yes,
powerful.
yes. I mean you just you listen not to respond. You listen to understand. You know. I mean that's this just
Remember,
silent. Yeah.
I am in Iran. It's a patriarch country, but women have tremendous power.
Yes.
And I've seen, for example, my grandmother. She was a really wise woman, and in the village that she lived, she was like the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
She was the witch, and she was always silent. I
Yes.
hardly remember her voice,
Right.
but the power, it just, and she was fragile, she was old and bent, but everybody was like, when she was walking in the alley, everybody was like, oh, she's coming, you know?
Just
So
her
that kind of,
eyes. Just
just
her
even,
eyes and
just
her.
her presence, just
Yes,
her
her
presence.
presence. Her
And
presence was healing.
the wisdom, when they talk a few words, the wisdom that changes your life. It's not talking all the time. This is a woman who have experienced animus as meaning or as animus as words. But my point was that in general, I think if we want to get over something like power or dethrone the king, we first have to discover the power. We first have to have the power. We first have to be the king to be dethroned.
The sacrifice, let me just repeat what it is, but I just think do you remember when von Franz was talking about that the woman sometimes has the power of life and death over over everyone around her, and she says that you know that a woman who is consciously who is um, is incredibly conscious of her being a woman and not you know not in as a nymph or as a projection for men, but as
Being
a
content
yes.
in yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere she goes, she's a healing presence. And she doesn't have to say a word because her power is not words. It is man who brings all these words. But let me just continue with the, which we'll discuss a little more organized next time because it was, is this, is that that man needs to get you know, become a swan, you know, to unite with the feminine realm. He needs to become nature. What woman needs to do is she first needs to sacrifice her her power of illusion, the one of uh, uh, that of magic. She needs to sacrifice because it is real. There's nothing fake about it. But she needs to know that she casts this spell and she says, "I give it up. I'm not going to use it." You know, and then and if she does that, she's pretty much overthrown the tyrant anyway. But at that point, she needs to say to the Animus who tells her she can't do it, or that she is more wonderful than she really is, or who gives her truths which are generally true, but not true here with this person in front of me. She needs to say, "Away with all of you. You cannot say anything that's going to tell me I can't accomplish something. And don't give me your fake praise." She's talking to an internal voice, not to any outer man. She's talking to an internal voice. This is how she overthrows the tyrant. And then the third thing is when he comes in and says, "Well, if you really want to do it this way, this is the generally accepted accounting principle here." You know, no. What is important here is this situation, the Tao of this moment. Do you think nature itself who is informed by anything other than the Tao of this moment? You know, about any general truth that comes from the masculine realm? Nature says, "Ha, it means nothing here." You know, so that's the way she overthrows the tyrant. So she's both given up, sacrificed her magic, and she's overthrown the tyrant. Now she is consciously feminine, and now the animus can do what it's supposed to do, is to provide meaning for the images that come up from the depths. She is now going to from her stance of nature, she's going to unite the star world with nature. So now she can now talk to the heavenly realms, and the heavenly realms can inform her now, but not until, okay. So I mean, we'll go more over that, but that's kind of a sort of a clumsy summary of it. Let's hear from everybody else, though. Gary, why don't you take over? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
You want to go ahead, Diane?
Thank you, Azine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Azine. That was very good. One thing that our question is, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but so as a woman who's trying to be conscious of her animus, and if she is possessed at certain times, I wonder did Emma Jung say anything about how to do that? Because I know what Von France says.
Yeah. Well, Emma Jung says that too. Is you the only way? There is no way. The only way that you can do it, she says, is through with a person who you can orient with over and over again and see what their mood is from your mood. And if you see them going into a poisonous direction, you have to wonder whether you are being possessed by the animus right now. And then if you can sort of search your awareness and try to bring the feminine up, it should address that situation. But she says that the woman has a very great difficulty telling whether she's possessed by the animus unless she has a reference point, and that the only reference point she has is the people around her,
right,
what their reactions are.
How through relationship, and that's for men the same thing, to become aware too. If they are projecting, for example, and things like that, they have to.
You're having a little connectivity problem.
In relationships, the act of. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry.
why don't you turn off your video for just a second? Just turn your video off,
sure.
and I think it'll be better. Yeah. Just a little bit of garbling. But while you're doing that, I just want to say this is, you know who is more possessed by the animus than anybody? Men. Men are more poisonously possessed by the animus than anybody, than any woman. Diana, could you talk now? See if it's okay.
I'm going to get on my phone.
Okay, sure.
It's connected. It connects better.
All right, sure. Well, let's just keep going around the room. We'll pick up with Diane as soon as she gets back. Gary, did you want?
Yeah, John, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks. It's very deep stuff. I have a hard time understanding it. But this was very helpful. One thing that I think I teased out of it that you had mentioned, Craig, and let me know if I'm wrong, is that, and I think you just mentioned it, but that, men can be just as unconscious of their animus, and I always thought that my understanding, I guess, now that I read more of Jungian psychology, was very basic. I thought, well, the man's journey is to make his animus more conscious, and the woman's journey is to make her animus more conscious, which I guess at first blush is true, but I think it goes much deeper than that. Because like you just said, more men that are possessed by the animus. I think when I look back over my life, I can see where both of that's true, and, how projecting the anima onto a woman, I know that the first step to consciousness is projection. So now is one thing I'm grateful for. I got a lot out of Hollis's book, In Search of the Magical Other. But one thing that I also thought about when you were going over this material is, I thought about Marilyn Monroe, and I only know of 2 dreams of hers, and I don't know if they're correct or not. Like I said, it's just what I've heard. But one she had in 1955 of her, where she went into an operating room, and I think it was her psychoanalyst and her acting coach were operating on her, and they cut her open, and there was absolutely nothing inside. And she was disappointed, and so was her analyst at the time. Had said that, I expected more, and it turns out there was just sawdust in there. And then I think of another dream where I think she walked into a church and all the men bowed down to her, you know. And I think that being so identified with that and not, like you said, willing to dethrone the tyrant, I think maybe that, you know, perhaps maybe she did commit suicide. I don't know. Because that meant giving up her feminine power. I don't know. That's just my own take on it. But I definitely look forward to you going over it again next week, because it's very, you know, it's very deep stuff. And sometimes I have a hard time following it, but I'm definitely going to read ahead. But I'm very grateful. So thank you very much.
That was one idea. If you are an anima figure like Marilyn Monroe, and everyone that you walk into the room and everyone you just suck the oxygen out of it, that is not helpful to you personally. I mean, it is you really are not an individual. You have become an archetype. You are absolutely. When you become an archetype, you become a collective image. That what does that do to your soul? You know, it's just incredible.
Yeah, that's it. Just one last quick thing. You just brought it up. I had forgotten about it, but I did a contract in Aspen, Colorado back in 2005, and I was hanging out with some friends at the Hotel Jerome, and we were in the J Bar, and Michael Douglas walked in with his wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and the place, I mean, it was a noisy place. It absolutely went quiet, and everybody looked at her because she is just so beautiful. I think that, you know, she was the collective hook for everybody's, you know, Anima pressure, because it literally went silent and everybody just looked at her. She's just like more beautiful in person than she is on TV. But I just thought of that when you said that. Yeah.
And to personally cultivate it, you know, and to, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on how wise you are, whether you use it to make a living, and then after you're done, you go back to being a human being. I don't know.
Great. Shall we go on to Eva?
Oh, I have been reading Barbara Hanna, and I came to one exorcistic old story, and I really felt I want to read something that is more into our time, about this, how it affects us. And I was thinking about this Paulo Coelho we were talking about yesterday evening dream group, and I heard that this book, which is called Veronica Decides to Die, is a self-biographic story. And why is he choosing it to take a feminine name and so on? And maybe some of you know about some Jungian analytic that have been interpreting an author art in some way that deal with this kind of concepts like Anima and Animus in our time.
Well, Von Franz has a couple books about it, and I will try to get copies of them. But one, not Von Franz, but Emma Jung mentions two, and I'll get copies of those. But I would say, if you want to know contemporary images, just how about your dreams?
Yes, and that's why I'm doing already.
Yeah, I mean, if that is going to be a little more topical, you know, and yeah.
I like that. Yeah. But it was good to have some kind of. I'm thinking about Clarissa Pinkola ST, yes. But she's using fairy tales mostly. I don't think if she is only discussing it in these kind of stories.
When we
It's a
get done
difference.
with this, I thought we'd go. These new Von Franz books that are coming out seem to be just like raw notes. I thought we'd go to some of her classic works, like the interpretation of fairy tales, which is probably her greatest work. That is
I
just
have read
so
some of.
rich, you can't believe it.
Yeah, but I have already read some of them, yes, and I like them, of course. Thank you.
Tim?
Boy, I'm really resonating with this one statement about the power of the silent anima. And this really struck me about 20 years ago when I started really channeling this image of this woman just looking at me. And I went through art history to try to find images of what I was feeling. And the only one I could find, let me share this with you, is this portrait by von Stuck of, as he
Oh my
calls
God,
it,
I was just
evil.
thinking about this, Tim.
Were
The
you?
moment you say, I was just saw this image. Interesting.
Well, it's a powerful image, and he actually did several versions of this. But here's this really intense stare right at the viewer, and I ended up doing a bunch of images similar to this. Here's one called The Vigilant Bride. Just with a silent stare, it's like being called to responsibility for something I don't understand. And actually, this happened right around the time of the President Bush's attack of Iraq in 2003. And I did, I would say, dozens of these images. This one's called Penetrix. And they all have this incredibly intense stare that seems to me was the only way of describing what I was feeling. A kind of call to responsibility. This one's called Physic, and it's kind of bizarre how she is not quite beautiful, but you cannot avoid this kind of gaze. It's so intense and so penetrating. And in this one, she's got this really dark snake wrapped around her, kind of like the von Stuck image. But I think there's a really powerful element to that idea of the silent anima that encompasses a kind of power that is very, very hard to articulate. It has nothing to do with the left brain and with language. It has to do with emotion and values, I think.
There's a movie called A Serious Man. I think it's by the Coen brothers, but there's a woman in there that just absolutely haunts me, and her name's Mrs. Samsky, and she never says anything. She just looks at you.
Huh.
She's I mean, he's totally smitten by her. It's his next door neighbor. But
It's
yeah,
called
I
A
mean,
Serious Man.
yeah, A Serious Man. It's a really it's worth the price of admission just to see the beginning of it, because it has nothing to do with the movie that follows, but it's about this woman who this man brings home this Jewish. It's back in the 1600s, and he brings home this Jewish man brings home this rabbi who's been dead for a long time, and his wife knows he's dead, and he says, "Oh, I'm not dead. Oh, listen to your wife here." And So she comes up to him and she just sticks an awl in his chest, and he's not affected by by it at all. You know, he's just surprised by it. But anyway, this Mrs. Samsky is quite a character. You know, but I love that. I mean, I'll never forget that, Azine. I'll have to. And Tim already knew about it. I think we all knew about it, but didn't say it out loud.
Do you want to try your connection again, Diane? And we'll go to
Yeah,
Ken.
I'm on my phone. I don't know what's wrong. The laptop is just bad, but I just want to say that to share the experience that I've had. A lot of men tell me that, or different men, not a lot. Some men tell me that, you know, if they thought I looked at them like I could see through them. So, so anyway, and I wonder about that, what that is, because you said something, Craig, about what that the female nature, that it's feminine, that what is the real truth that both men and women are looking for is feminine. And so I wonder if that's, you know, part of what comes through the eyes sometimes. But I thinking about what Eva said about our time. Ava said about our times. I think that we are still in a very similar situation, but just a progression of what they were going through then at the beginning of the century. And women our age have lived through the women's movement and all of that. And I think a lot of women had to assume an aggressive, maybe animus persona to be able to find some equality in the society, because it's so dominated for so many, I don't know, for almost forever by men. And, you know, is talking about what happened and to Eve, as written by men, about she was the one that was the sinner, and she's the one that was punished for her revelation of knowledge, and that was projected on her by men, and that's what we have lived with for almost forever in our history. So, you know, and then I think women have had to also come to terms in our time, at least partially, with, you know, we can't give up our femininity. We need, you know, that's wrong for us to allow that animus in us to be a tyrant over us, like you said. I think that makes perfect sense to what I've experienced in my lifetime, and that why Azine's grandmother was so powerful is because she was a older woman, because young women in society do not have that status. I mean, there are always exceptions, and I think Azine was probably an exception in her culture. And even in our culture today, what's going on with this, with the militia that are following Trump, they are fighting because they don't want to lose their power to women. This is a lot about, in my opinion, what their resentment that women have found some place, a position of not just power. I don't think it's just about power. It's about having a place at the table and contributing to the dialogue. Can everyone hear me okay? I want to make sure. Okay. And so, and then, but what's even more astounding to me is the women that support them and what they're doing. So that's what we're going through now. And the battle, it's, you know, it's hard to talk about it as a battle. It shouldn't be. You know, women, we need men. We need men. We need the support of men. And we need, our voice needs to be heard if we're going to have a healthier society. So that's my piece.
Thank you. Kat?
I, you know, there's, I don't know really what to say. I mean, like, I don't know. I just think it's very, hi, John, bless you. I just think it's very, you know, it's the inner work at the end of the day, because, you know, like what Diana said, you know, some of the things that you're hearing out there, it's very frightening. We're now supposedly having gay men telling us what it's like to be a woman or what it's like to be feminine, and you're having the privilege and blah, 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 blah. Somehow it is a privilege. Hello, gorgeous. Hello, Zine. But the thing is, privilege is a privilege, and yet, you know, we don't think of the fact, or it's forgotten about the fact of, like, understands that, you know, men supposedly, well, have been castrated and things, but women had to become both masculine and they had to put their femininity aside, especially like things of war, you know, death, desertion, you know, when there were the laws that didn't really protect women at all. A bloke could squander the money, beat 7 kinds of hell out of the kids and his wife to the point of near death, and there was nothing there to protect them. And then they could just trot off and then come back a year later after the next woman has kicked him out, and he could appear at the kitchen table, and you have to carry on like it's all good. And if he'd gone, the woman is shunned anyway. She's shamed. Or if she had done this, if she had done that, if she'd done the other, you know what I mean? So, you know, there is a lot to work through. And okay, men feel whatever, I don't mean to say whatever, like being dismissive, you know, castrated or whatever, all that kind of thing. Well, that works in a way for women. It's like in the fact of I think the biggest gaslighting thing has been the thing of you're emotional, you're not logical, speak sense, you're crazy for reacting when you know that there's underhandedness going on, and you know, women are just emotional creatures or whatever. But then to ignore the fact that men are also emotional, i.e., you see them at the football match and their team has lost. Look at the rioting, look at all the fighting, look at all the anger and that's, you know, worked through that. Or if a woman trots down the street and like a bloke is catcalling her or whatever, and she ignores them, then she gets called a bitch. She gets called, she's stuck up, she's this, that, and the other. And, you know, if she complains, she's then got to be nice about being gawped at, her ass slapped, and everything. Do you know what I mean? You know, the invasion of personal space. Because if she's not nice about it, or setting boundaries, if she sets boundaries, like kicks off, then she's angry, she's whatever. And it's just those kinds of things. It's just like, where the hell do you begin? Well, you can only begin in yourself. And it's kind of like, you're attractive if you're, showing a bit of flesh or whatever. But then if you are intellectual and you're not using your feminine gifts, then you're not attractive at all. You're threatening the men. So then you want a comely woman that's going to be domesticated and standing behind a sink and just cooking meals, as though that's enough for anybody in life, as though that's enough for anybody's purpose, and to be grateful about it. I mean, it's like you're either a glorified cleaner and a common prostitute, and that's what you're meant to be. That's it's very complicated. It's very complicated, but I digress. But yeah, it's all within. It's all within. That's what we've got to do.
Well, let's hear from Dahlia, and then Azine can finish. Go ahead, Dahlia. I don't know. We're just running a little past here. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, we can hear you, Dahlia.
You hear me?
Yeah, you're coming
Okay.
through.
Cool. Okay, me, I was thinking about many things. Okay, like maybe from a little bit from personal perspective, because of like, okay, what is it's connected, but it's still one. What is the nature of attraction? Why do you? I can differ. There are different things. Like if you can sometimes feel something like traumatic magnetic thing, like how to say? I can recognize these ones if it's not healthy. But sometimes, what is the purpose and what is attraction then in itself? Like, why, if it's not a projection? But I don't know. I'm just trying to go through the what's the point when it's the projection and when it's not a projection. So for me, I don't know. I'm just
that is something we've talked about before, Dahlia, too. Is but let me just say this: that it's an invitation to life. That's what it's supposed to be. But it's supposed to be an invitation to life of someone, and after that, it's not supposed to be sexual. It's supposed to be an invitation to life, not to sex. That attractiveness. I mean, which is absolutely magical. I mean, it certainly is. Azine, did you want to have the last word here? We'll finish this up next time, because you guys, I could have said a million words, but we're kind of running out of time. Go ahead, Azine.
A lot to talk about, but I want to reply to Kat. I think when we are talking about our times, it's different when we are talking about the idea. Like in our times, of course, the feminine is rising, and Jung predicted it a couple of 3-4 decades ago, and we're getting out of a period of almost 25,000 years of patriarchy. So we are in a very challenging time. Of course, in our time, the emphasis should be on discovering the feminine. But when we're talking about, I don't know what this noise is. But we're talking about in general, the idea of Anima and Animus. And we're talking about the cutting edge people who are experiencing I'm sorry, there's some kind of noise here. I don't know.
Oh, let me see.
Someone is typing or something. Anyways, the idea is the balance of Anima and Animus. So if you're in a cutting edge layer of consciousness that we are supposed to be here, we have to be more balanced. Like I had a speech one time in one of the universities, and everybody was excited because the title of the speech was "The Next Step in Feminism." So every activist woman was there, and they were waiting, expecting to hear more about feminine. And I suggested that the next step in feminism is discovering the new man, the new God, as Jung Bullen also suggests, and that there's an earth God that is rising. And that is our new step. This is our coming step for women who have already experienced the feminine side, lived their animus. So now we are in this state that is in the Holy Grail myth, that we are discovering this new God that is earthly and connected to his feelings and is supportive and powerful, but not abusive. I remember the first time that I heard Robert Bly's, he has a YouTube thing on, there was a movement, some of you may know, men's mythopoetical movement. Joseph Campbell was in it, Robert Bly was in it, Hillman was in it, Michael Mead was in it. And there was this beautiful poetic, mythical poetic movement. And when I first heard Robert Bly talking about this kind of man that has never been, and we have lost it, or we have to discover it, a man that is initiated by his father. The castration just not happens because of women movement. It's because the men are not initiated by father. They don't have father figures. So when I first discovered this part in my psyche, the kind of powerful, supportive, warm, and strong man that is not abusive, I burst into tears. And I realized that's what I've been looking for all my life. And I probably will never meet him in our times. So this is the cutting edge. And of course, we have to emphasize on femininity right now, that inner is more important, or feeling is important. But at the end of the day, in your own psyche, you need to marry these two figures.
Yes.
This is the whole point.
That's beautiful, Azim, because as you say, we do need more of those expressions or whatever in our life. When you get bombarded with social media and all the nonsense of celebrity kind of stuff, those are like the kind of new gods, do you know what I mean? But we do need those sort of like what you've talked about. That needs to be our new god when we're working with ourselves and relating those parts of ourselves in each other, in ourselves, if you see them in the two sides, as you say, that marriage within, so that we have less need to look at those projections of the world, if you see what I mean, that tells us what's important, like i.e. social media, or that kind of celebrity nonsense, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But a golden question that one of my students asked once was, we were talking about Anima and Animus, and she said, what does it mean to be a woman? And it's a golden question because meaning is coming from Animus. This question is rising from the marriage between Animus and Anima. What is the meaning of being a woman? And media, as you said, is bullshit. The idea of femininity in the media, and also being a man, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. There's no depth in it. And
Did
both of these
Did your grandmother ever ask that question?
Probably unconsciously. Yeah, because she was powerful.
Yeah.
But anyways, these two forces are really, really beautiful. And if you discover them, there is no preference. You cannot prefer female over animal over animus or vice versa.
Well, we'll finish this next time. I'll try to do it very organized, very concise, and then everybody come, and we'll talk about kind of finish some of these wonderful thoughts. But I mean, I think primarily it's what it really is intellect versus the other three functions, and it is separation from nature versus nature, and it is the outer world being overvalued versus the depths and their wisdom. I mean all those things, the intellect, the outer world, and power principle are overvalued here, and that's our sickness and our separation from nature. And then over on this side, all those other things are undervalued. Our nature, not world's nature, but our nature, etc. And Gary, I can't wait to hear your new chapter. So we'll just finish the Animus part of this book next time, and I'm going to do it a lot more organized. But I'm saying this has been a total revelation to me. The symmetry between what man and women have to do to both to integrate the animus and the anima. It's a similar task, and that is we both need to become consciously feminine, and we both need to give up the king of thinking. The king of thinking needs to be dethroned. Well, thank you everybody, and we'll finish this part up next time. So see you guys later. Thank you
Thank you.
all
Take
so
care.
much. Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.